Mung beans and soybeans are generally grown in bins or beds in separate rooms. Rooms are kept dark, humid, and with temperatures between 70 to 79 degrees Fahrenheit. An intermittent spray, for example, less than a minute every 4 hours, is applied either manually with a hose or by an automated watering system. Buckets, bins, barrels, or beds should all be raised off the floor to prevent contaminants from splashing onto the product. During the sprouting process, samples of irrigation water or sprouts should be tested for pathogens, E. coli, O157H7, and Salmonella. Samples should be collected at least 48 hours after the start of sprouting, but no later than 48 hours before harvest and packaging to allow the sprouter to obtain results before the product is shipped. It is important that persons collecting samples understand aseptic sampling procedures to avoid contaminating samples and know how to label and package samples for transport to a laboratory. It is strongly recommended that all testing for pathogens be done by an external, qualified, independent laboratory. Additional details on sampling and testing procedures are contained later in this video. When sprouts have reached the desired stage of growth, they are removed from growing containers or harvested. Depending on conditions and the rate of growth, sprouters may harvest a little sooner than expected, or they may let the sprouts grow a little longer. This variability should be figured in when planning when to sample for microbial testing. All equipment used to transfer seed to growing containers and to harvest sprouts should be cleaned and sanitized. Equipment and tools should be stored between use in a clean and sanitary condition. Tools should not be placed on the floor or used for other purposes. During harvest and washing, sprouts should be handled with clean and sanitary equipment. After sprouts are removed from the growing container, they are washed with cool water to remove excess hulls. Washing with cool water also helps bring down the temperature of the sprouts. Sprouts may be washed in a bucket of water and sieved through a hand screen, or they may be placed in a bubbling tub of water to loosen and float off hulls. Occasionally, sprouts are washed in recirculating water in a flume system. If water is reused for washing successive batches of sprouts, water treatment systems and monitoring devices should be in place to maintain water quality. After washing, sprouts are usually spin-dried using a centrifuge for 1 minute, or in some instances, a clothes dryer for 2 minutes. Sometimes sprouts are placed in a cold room between harvest and packaging to remove heat generated during the sprouting process. Anytime sprouts are cooled in a cold room, they should be placed in small, shallow containers to allow for rapid cooling and to minimize the potential growth of pathogens. Sprouts in a large container, such as a 20-gallon barrel, may take several days to cool. When cool and dry, fully germinated sprouts are ready for packaging. Some firms grow sprouts in soil. This practice carries some additional considerations. If a sprouter is growing sprouts both in soil and hydroponically, soil-grown sprouts should be grown in a separate room from hydroponic sprouts to avoid cross-contamination. Tools and equipment used for soil-grown sprouts should not be used for hydroponic sprouts. Personnel should change boots and clothing and wash hands after working with soil-grown sprouts and before entering other areas of the facility. Seed used for soil trays is soaked and rinsed as described earlier for hydroponic operations. After rinsing, wet seed is usually held in buckets to allow for initial germination. Again, this should be kept to as short a time as possible to minimize microbial growth. While seed is soaking, plastic trays are filled with soil. Sprouters growing sprouts in soil should choose a growing medium, for example, sterilized potting soil, that does not contribute to food safety concerns. Manure, even composted manure, should not be used. Pre-soaked seeds are spread on top of the soil and leveled out. Growing usually takes place in a greenhouse. Water is sprayed on trays usually 2 times daily by an automated pipe system overhead. Sprouts can take 5 to 10 days for optimal growth in wintertime or 3 to 10 days in summertime. Most soil-grown sprouts are harvested at the facility, washed, packaged, and delivered to the customer. Typically, soil-grown products are brought into a cutting and packaging room in soil trays. Ideally, soil-grown sprouts will be packaged in a separate area that is cleaned and sanitized between use. If the same room is used to package soil-grown sprouts and other sprouts, soil-grown sprouts should be brought in alone, for example, when no other product is being packaged. All surfaces that come in contact with soil or soil trays should be thoroughly cleaned and sanitized before other product enters the area. Some sprouters do not harvest soil-grown sprouts at the facility, but place the sprouts and soil tray in a plastic bag and deliver the product directly to the retailer. At the retailer, the tray is placed in a cooler. Typical retailers of this product are juice blending shops. These shops cut sprouts, primarily wheatgrass, directly from the tray and drop them into a blender with other fruits, vegetables, and various ingredients. When the retailer is finished cutting sprouts from the tray of soil with remaining roots is returned to the sprouter. The sprouter may pick up these trays while delivering new trays of freshly grown, uncut product. Trays should be thoroughly cleaned and sanitized before reuse. Some sprouters deposit used soil and remaining sprout parts into a compost mound. However, reuse of this soil for sprout production is not recommended. Packaging should be done as quickly as possible after harvest. Packaging is usually done manually and should be done in a separate packaging room. Packaging materials should be stored in a clean, dry, pest-free environment, separate from seed. Only food-grade packaging materials should be used. Since sprouts are living plants and continue to respire, packaging materials should not permit an anaerobic condition to develop. Packaging usually occurs at the growing site. However, occasionally, product is transported in bulk to another location to be packaged. Some firms selling at farmers markets transport the product in bulk and package the product into retail containers as it is sold. It's much more difficult to control conditions at a farmer's market compared to a packaging room in an enclosed facility. Hand washing facilities may not be easily accessible at a farmer's market, and product may be exposed to hot sun and blowing dirt. Such conditions make appropriate handling of potentially hazardous food very difficult. If product is sold like this, special care should be taken to ensure product is kept cold, to avoid bare hand contact with the product, and that utensils used to transfer sprouts to retail containers are clean and sanitary. Sprouts have been designated as a potentially hazardous food in FDA's Food Code. Therefore, if the Food Code has been adopted in the state, certain requirements need to be met, one of which is maintaining a cold chain or keeping product cold at all times. Packaged sprouts should be placed immediately in refrigerated storage. Cold room temperature should be 41 degrees Fahrenheit or less. Temperature should be monitored and recorded, or a continuous temperature recording device used. Thermometers should be checked regularly to ensure they're working and that they are accurate. Measuring the temperature of the product in the center of the room is a better indicator of product temperature than measuring room temperature. Product should be arranged to allow good air circulation and rapid cooling. Because sprouts are still respiring, they can generate heat, even in a cold room. Small containers and good air circulation help prevent hot spots that may result due to heat generated by the still living sprouts. The cold chain needs to be maintained as much as possible when staging or stacking boxes to prepare for loading delivery trucks. Refrigerated delivery trucks should be cooled before product is loaded. Staging on non-refrigerated docks and/or in the hot sun, and likewise, delivering product to non-refrigerated customer docks breaks the cold chain. If product warms, microorganisms may grow. Delivery vehicles should be clean and sanitary. They should have refrigeration and thermometer gauges, especially if they are going more than a short distance. Remember that delivery times depend not only on distance, but also on the number of delivery stops made. Since sprouts are perishable foods, at retail they need to be held under refrigeration. Once sprouts are harvested, cleaning and sanitation activities should take place prior to the next production run. This is where your Sanitation Standard Operating Procedure, SSOP, becomes especially important. As discussed earlier, an SSOP should detail all steps necessary to properly clean and sanitize your facility, along with instructions for how and how often these steps should be taken. SSOP should detail how all equipment, utensils, and food contact surfaces should be routinely disassembled, inspected, cleaned, and sanitized prior to being placed back into operation. SSOP should also detail how non-food contact surfaces, including floors, walls, and ceilings, are to be cleaned and sanitized. SSOP should include safeguards to ensure that sanitation activities do not contaminate ingredients, finished products, or packaging. SSOP should detail how all chemicals used during sanitation activities are to be stored, measured, handled, and disposed of.